Welcome to Part 2 of the Introduction to FRBR. FRBR entities are divided into 3 groups. Group 1 is the product of a creative endeavor and described in library catalog records, also known as bibliographic records. These entities are work, expression, manifestation, and item, affectionately referred to as WEMI. The work entity is abstract and can only be experienced by a single soul. It is essentially an idea, which we do our best to identify in some meaningful way by giving that idea a name, like a title. In my corner of the field, it is the conceptualization of a piece of music inside the head of the composer. Entire albums can also be works, like the conceptualization of the album Lemonade inside Beyoncé's head. An expression is the work in a version that is accessible to human ingest, such as a story in written form or in a particular language, or the audible sound of a concert, regardless of how it is conceptualized in the head of the creator. The work and expression entities represent intellectual or artistic content. A manifestation is a physical embodiment of the expression, like the recording of sound or the printing of books. A single work, which can be expressed in a specific language, may be printed in one book, and may also be printed in another book. Though the work entity in the author's head and the language expression of it are the same, the books themselves may have different publishers, making each book a distinct manifestation. Then an item is the copy of the manifestation that is in your hand. If we all have a copy of the same book, written by the same author and published by the same publisher, we have different items. If your friends have copies of the same thing, you all have different items, and those items are different than my item. Manifestation and item more directly represent a physical object or a digital file in a tangible form. Music itself is the prime example of FRBR Group 1 because all of the parts of WEMI are very easily distinguished in music. Here is a little detail about how that all works, using my area of expertise as an example. The work is an abstract concept. The synapses in Beethoven's brain created the work, but the only human able to interpret those synapses in such a way that resulted in this symphony was Beethoven himself. Though the rest of us get what it is, we've heard it or seen the notes on the page, none of us can ever know what it looked or sounded like in his head. There are many attributes that a work like this might have. A form of the title that makes it distinct from other works, a numeric designation if it is one of several works with similar titles, and several others. In this example, we can easily ascertain the title, symphony, the key, C minor, and the numeric designations of number 5 and opus 67. In a related data record that we can connect through the string of characters that we see here, we could find details on when it was conceived. Essentially, it's the symphony as he heard it in his head, the fifth symphony that came to mind as an idea that only Beethoven himself could perceive. Attributes include the fact that it is in symphony form, it's in the musical key of C minor, and it's the fifth symphony he wrote and the 67th piece of music he composed. Other attributes may be implied, such as the fact that the symphony is intended to be performed by a whole orchestra of musicians. Also, pardon this view of IUCAT, it was the last version, so it may look a little different than what you are used to seeing now. The concept of an expression is a little clearer. In print, a human can interpret Beethoven's imagination in such a way that makes sense to others. In this example, it is the realization of the work into musical notes that are visible to the human eye. Here's where music really starts to clearly represent WEMI. The same idea, Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, can be experienced as sound that we could hear or music notes on paper that we can see. Both are different expressions of the same work. Then the manifestation takes that further. The same idea again, Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, that we can experience as musical notes on paper, is published by multiple companies. All four are different manifestations of the same expression of the same work. The concept of a manifestation really brings it into focus, and the attributes of the manifestation entity are what we are most used to seeing specifically in a library catalog record that set this one apart from others like it. For example, the expression of the work is manifested through the Baron edition of the miniature score published in 2001. This is the entity that most closely ties with catalog records as they look to us. The 115-page, 23-centimeter miniature score version of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, printed from the etched plate numbered TP905, that was published by a company called Baron in 2001 and given the International Standard Music Number, or ISMN, like an ISBN, 9790006204281. Then the item entity takes the manifestation concept further to describe the actual object we are able to interact with directly. In a physical form, this is the thing you can take off of a shelf. In a digital form, this is the file that you are looking at on a computer screen. This one, and not that one, not even the other one with the same number of pages, published by the same publisher, printed from the same etched plate with the same call number. Attributes include identifiers like the barcode in a library, especially when combined with information about call number and location. The term in hand is commonly used in library speak to indicate that we are not drawing information from memory or hearsay. Group 2 represents those responsible for the content, the physical production or dissemination, or those who serve as the custodian of a WEMI. Person is pretty self-explanatory, but there are some examples where the word person is applied broadly, such as the spirit of a person, like Beethoven's ghost, or a pseudonym, like Robert Galbraith. In the case of music, and especially sound, person most often refers to the composer of a musical work, or performer of a musical work in a manifestation of musical expression. Corporate body often goes beyond the term corporate as well. This regularly includes performing groups, organizations, or groups of people, like the students of this class. Attributes of those entities can be name, dates that a person was active or a corporate body was in business, the main purpose of their work, like a conductor who conducts an orchestra, an author who writes a book, etc., and even things like a place with which they are associated. All of these have been referred to as agents, and some still will be in the future, but for class purposes, you will hear the term agent frequently in reference to any person or group of people related to an aspect of WEMI. Group 3 serves as the subjects of works. They have the attributes you might expect. We will get more into this in detail later in the semester. In general, these are topics covered by the content. Relationships between entities can be seen here. There are relationships between entities in a single work, or in a single group, like relationships between WEMI and entities where Jim Dale narrates the audiobook version of the Harry Potter series. There are also relationships between entities in different groups, like we saw in the connection between the orchestra and Beethoven's idea for the Fifth Symphony. I'll explain more in a later slide, but this is where it will really start to get tricky in the future. FRBR defines aggregate entities, and component entities. In the simplest terms, aggregates bring multiple things together. We also see this term in other areas of the field, when we work with subscription-based journal article aggregators, otherwise known as databases, such as EBSCO's Academic Search. Aggregates and components are very common. Most sound recordings are aggregate works, comprised of multiple distinct individual works. The same goes for a book of stories, poems, or essays. Those distinct individual works in an aggregate are components of the aggregate. Each of those components can usually stand alone. Hamlet is one of the easiest WUMI exercises. Consider the different versions of William Shakespeare's Hamlet that you might encounter. What is the work? What is an expression of that work? What is a manifestation of that expression of that work? What is an item of that manifestation of that expression of that work? Is it an aggregate entity? What are the component entities? Who are the persons involved? What corporate bodies may be responsible? The play as it was imagined by Shakespeare is the work. It has been expressed in writing in many languages, and it has been expressed verbally through performances of the play. Some of those performances may be seen over and over again and never change, as they have been recorded as audio or video. But no live performance is ever the same, as an actor may change the tone of their voice or take a larger step in a scene. Each scene could be performed separately. Hamlet could be included in a larger volume of Shakespeare's works, or a single scene may be part of an actor's audition portfolio. Shakespeare, of course, is the most critical person, and the one who is tied to every single iteration of Hamlet, even now well beyond his life. Translators have made his story available in other languages. Actors have brought it to life, and directors have interpreted his intent. Production companies coordinate performances. Costume and scene designers add visual appeal.